I don't know how I feel about Leatherheads because, on the one hand, there are a lot of things about it that work well, and I will certainly praise those things. On the other, I don't agree with the approach. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. This was released in 2008. It's directed by George Clooney. It's written by Duncan Brantley and Rick Riley. And we have a cast including George Clooney, Renée Zellweger, John Krasinski. Amazing cast across the board. And despite the fact that I don't care for football, American football, I love sports-based films. And this one's set in the 1920s. So I love anything that takes me back in time. And I thought this was going to be fascinating, educational. No. This is the problem that I have with this. It's not based on a true story. And going into it, I thought it was. And while I was watching it, I was obviously listening to the names that I was hearing and Googling them to see if I could get a bit of background information. And it's not based on a true story. So I feel like if you're going to do something that feels historical like this, for me personally, I don't think it should be fabricated, because that's implying that the real stories of American football back in the day, 100 years ago, are not that interesting. And I don't think that would be the case. I imagine those stories would be quite interesting, and I'm sure there are films that tell those stories. If you can recommend any, please feel free to do so. But to fabricate a story like this, it just feels fake. Apparently, it is loosely based on the life of Johnny Blood McNally. And if that's the case, fine. Why not tell Johnny Blood McNally's story instead of just loosely basing it? I mean, maybe there's a reason why they couldn't tell that story. I don't know. But I just disagree with creating a film that feels like you're telling a historic, significant piece of history in American football when it's completely fabricated. Had they done something similar but contemporary, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But going into this, it feels like it should be biographical, and it isn't. And I don't like that. If you don't have a problem with that, then you might enjoy the film more than I did. That's worth bearing in mind. This is purely my opinion and what I look for. But if you don't care about that, then maybe you'll enjoy it. It's focusing on this football player who's playing for college football, and he's asked to play for this other team, and it helps to save American football, and it all sounds relatively interesting, and were it a true story or heavily based on truth, then yeah, I would have found it to be fun and educational. But I just kind of got a bit irritated that it was apparently so heavily fabricated, but it felt like they were telling me a true story. I felt like I was being taken back in time to get this education. And obviously on that front, it didn't deliver. And it doesn't say that it's delivering that. But had I not Googled it, I would have felt that I was being given that education until the end of the film. At which point I would have Googled it. Let's say I saw this in the cinema and then got home. But to be fair, I probably would have Googled it beforehand. The point there is that I don't expect anybody to have to Google a film to learn about it before watching it. And if, like me, you go into this looking for that education, and you learn that it's feeling like a biographical film, it's feeling like it's going to be historically accurate, and it isn't, it's just a bit of a letdown. That being said, the story is fine, the characters are fine, we have some very good performances, it looks very good, the costumes look great. I don't know if they're historically accurate, but they look good nevertheless. The music is really great, it ticks all of the right boxes, but I can't help feeling that it was a huge missed opportunity when they could have told a film that was a lot more factual, a lot more biographical. It would have been informative, educational, and I assume it still would have been entertaining and fun and fascinating. And as I said, I refuse to believe that there are no stories from, let's say, the 1920s regarding American football that would be interesting in a film. So if you're going to present something that feels biographical, please make it biographical, or at least very heavily based on fact, which doesn't appear to be the case here. Do I recommend it? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea, because in general, it's a good film. There's nothing about it that doesn't work insofar as presenting a well-written story, well-written characters, visually satisfying, great performances, great music. But I went into it looking for what I felt was going to be this historical education, and that's not what's delivered. Now, to be fair, it's not claiming to be biographical, but it certainly comes across. For example, the poster that I'm looking at on Wikipedia says, "In the beginning, the rules were simple. There weren't any." that sounds like we're going to be learning about the beginning of American football. And again, there may be some elements of truth here, but from what I could tell when I was Googling the team names and the individual names, it's not based completely on truth. So maybe one could argue it is kind of advertising itself as being the origin story of American football, or things that happen early on, and that's not what it delivers. So it's not completely saying it's a work of truth, but some could argue that that's certainly what it's coming across as. So it's a little sly in that regard. Leatherheads could have been amazing if they just told a slightly different story, or involved slightly different characters, or maybe shifted the time period if they needed to tell a story that was as interesting. There are a lot of great aspects about this film, but for me personally, it didn't deliver what it seemed like it was going to, based on phrases such as, "in the beginning, the rules were simple." So yeah, it's great, but it's not great. If you want to watch it, check it out. If you feel like you'd have the same issue I did, that's worth bearing in mind. Or if now that you know that it's fictitious for the most part, and then you can watch it knowing that, it would be a different experience. So Leatherheads could have been amazing if they'd taken a slightly different direction, but I guess I can't say it's a bad film. I'd say maybe misleading is the right word. I didn't love it, but there are a lot of great things about it. So I guess check it out if you're curious.